Father versus son, the Iglesias Dynasty War. Two voices, two generations, one family name that conquered the world twice. But behind the glamour and the Grammy Awards lies a story of competition, pride, and the complex dance between a father who built an empire and a son who had to tear it down to build his own. This is the untold story of the Iglesias Dynasty War. Madrid, 1975. 8-year-old Enrique Iglesias watches his father perform for thousands of screaming fans. The boy doesn't understand the words. Julio sings in languages Enrique barely knows, but he feels the power. The way crowds surrender to his father's voice. The way women throw themselves at the stage. The way his father becomes a god under those lights. But gods, Enrique would learn, make terrible fathers. Julio Iglesias was already a global phenomenon when Enrique was born. By the time the boy could walk, his father was selling millions of albums worldwide, singing in 14 languages, conquering hearts from Tokyo to New York. The man who had risen from a hospital bed to become the world's most romantic voice was rarely home to sing lullabies to his own children. "My father was a stranger who happened to live in our house," Enrique would later confess. When he was there, which wasn't often, he was still performing, always on stage, even at the dinner table. The divorce came when Enrique was 8. Julio and Isabel Preisler's marriage couldn't survive the weight of global stardom. The custody battle was brutal, played out in Spanish tabloids like a telenovela. Enrique and his siblings went to live with their mother, while Julio continued his conquest of the world stages. But something had been planted in that 8-year-old boy. A seed of both admiration and resentment that would grow into an obsession, proving he could be bigger than his father. The teenage years were a battlefield disguised as family dinners. When Julio was home, conversations became competitions. Julio would speak of his latest album, his sold-out tours, his international acclaim. Enrique would listen, smile, and quietly plan his rebellion. At 15, Enrique started writing songs, not in Spanish like his father, but in English. Not romantic ballads for middle-aged women, but pop anthems for his generation. He studied his father's career like a military strategist studying enemy positions, looking for weaknesses, gaps he could exploit. "I knew I couldn't beat him at his own game," Enrique admitted years later. "So I had to create a new game entirely." The first shock came in 1995. Enrique, just 20 years old, released his debut album, not under the Iglesias name, but simply as Enrique. He wanted to succeed or fail on his own merit, not ride his father's coattails. The album went platinum in Spain within weeks. Julio's reaction was complex. Pride mixed with something else. Was it concern? Competition? For the first time in decades, there was another Iglesias voice climbing the charts. And it wasn't his. But the real war began when Enrique crossed into English-language music. In 1999, Bailamos became a global hit. Suddenly, the son wasn't just successful in Spain. He was conquering America, the one market where Julio had never achieved total dominance. The media loved the narrative. Father versus son. Old guard versus new generation. Latin crooner versus pop sensation. Every interview became a comparison. Every chart position was analyzed through the lens of family rivalry. "People always ask me about competing with my father," Enrique said during a 2001 interview. "But they don't understand. I'm not competing with him. I'm trying to escape him." The escape became a sprint. While Julio had taken decades to build his empire, Enrique was building his in years. Bailamos was followed by Be With You, then Escape, then Hero. Each hit was bigger than the last. Each success was a step further from his father's shadow. But Julio wasn't standing still. As his son conquered pop radio, the father reinvented himself. New albums, new collaborations, new tours. The man who had survived a car crash, paralysis, and decades of changing musical tastes wasn't about to be overshadowed by his own offspring. The tension reached its peak in 2001. Both father and son were nominated for Latin Grammy Awards in the same category. The cameras captured everything. Julio's forced smile when Enrique's name was called. Enrique's conflicted expression as he accepted an award his father had been denied. That night, I realized I had become everything I swore I wouldn't, Enrique reflected later. I had become my father's competitor instead of his son. The numbers told the story of a changing of the guard. By 2005, Enrique had sold over 100 million records worldwide. His concerts drew younger, more diverse crowds. His music videos dominated MTV. He had achieved something his father never could. He had made Latin music cool for American teenagers. But success came with a price. The more famous Enrique became, the more distant his relationship with Julio grew. They were polite at family gatherings, professional when their paths crossed in the industry, but the easy father-son relationship had been sacrificed on the altar of ambition. The breaking point came during a 2007 interview, when a journalist asked Enrique if he considered himself more successful than his father. His answer was diplomatic but devastating. We're successful in different ways, for different generations. But if you're asking about numbers, about global reach, about cultural impact on young people, the answer is obvious. Julio's response came not in words, but in action. At 64, an age when most artists consider retirement, he launched his most ambitious tour in decades. Sold-out arenas across Latin America, Europe, and Asia. A reminder that the king wasn't ready to abdicate. The war had casualties beyond the two principles. Enrique's siblings found themselves caught between loyalties. Family gatherings became minefields of unspoken tensions. The Iglesias name, once a source of pride, became a burden that divided rather than united. But wars, even family wars, eventually find their resolution. The turning point came in 2010, when Julio suffered a minor heart scare. Suddenly, the competition seemed less important than the relationship. Enrique flew to Madrid, not as a rival, but as a son. For the first time in years, they talked, really talked, about something other than music. I realized I had spent so much energy trying not to be my father that I had forgotten how to be his son, Enrique admitted. And he had spent so much energy being Julio Iglesias that he had forgotten how to be my dad. The reconciliation was gradual, private, and incomplete. They would never be the close father-son duo that fans imagined. Too much had been said, too many opportunities for connection had been missed, but they found a way to coexist, to respect each other's achievements without feeling diminished by them. Today, the numbers speak for themselves. Julio Iglesias, over 300 million records sold, Guinness World Record holder, legend of romantic music. Enrique Iglesias, over 180 million records sold, king of Latin pop, bridge between cultures and generations. Two different empires, two different legacies, one family name that proved big enough for both. The Iglesias Dynasty war ended not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. The father who had conquered the world with ballads of love had to learn to love his son without conditions. The son who had fought so hard to escape his father's shadow had to accept that some shadows are worth standing in. In the end, they didn't destroy each other. They completed each other. Julio showed the world that Latin music could be sophisticated, romantic, timeless. Enrique proved it could also be young, sexy, and global. The war is over. The dynasty continues. And somewhere in Madrid, two voices that once competed now occasionally harmonize, creating something more beautiful than either could achieve alone. Sometimes the greatest victory is learning when to stop fighting.